kind of alarmingly fast. At least from my perspective, it was. No bitches. I guess I also feel like if I had free will, then I would be able to change my nature instead of my free will being a result of my nature, which is how it seems. Yeah, I can see that. I just don't understand the factors that would make that arise, but that doesn't mean it's not real. Like, I don't understand the factors that make consciousness arise from unconscious matter, but it happens, so, what I understand doesn't determine reality. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because it's like, I'll just use the consciousness example, is like, if you take a bunch of dead atoms, one dead atom plus a second dead atom just equals two dead atoms. And if you add a million, then it's just a million dead atoms. But if you have a certain number of atoms that are organized in a certain way, somehow consciousness arises out of it, which doesn't make any sense, really. So you could say, well, there has to be some kind of omniquality or God-given thing. But to me, that's just another way of saying we just don't know. Saying it's God is just the same as saying, well, we just don't know, to me. But it could be. Uh, I'm not sure. Like a low level consciousness. Right. Yeah. Mm. You know what thought I had? What if uh what if your consciousness is just a single atom and I was looking at the road and I was like thinking about atomic consciousness, and I was thinking, okay, well, when I look at the road, I see it all as one thing, it's one road. So would the consciousness of that road be experiencing itself as an entire road? And I was like, well, no, that doesn't make any sense, because, like, if I broke off a chunk of that road, would that chunk now be its own little guy, little Amazing World of Gumball piece of stone, And I was like, well, no, so, like, and because, like, any to the road being one thing is just an abstraction. That's just a human-made concept. Like the atoms in the road don't differentiate from, the road doesn't think it's separate from the sidewalk or anything else. I'm like, okay, so what unit does think it's separate? And an atom, to me, like, it makes sense that an atom could have its own identity, or like its own experience as an atom, but like it wouldn't experience the wholeness of being a road. It would just experience its one atomness bonded to other atoms in the road. And so, how if you took a single atom and you gave it the biochemical equipment to get feedback and experience, a body, then like the atoms in the nervous system aren't conscious, but because they're peripheral to like where everything is going towards the center, so the center could just be one atom that's experiencing all the input from all the other atoms. So I was just thinking, like, what if your consciousness really is just one atom, and then when you die, you don't really die per se. Your soul doesn't disappear or go somewhere else. It's just all the lights are turned off to that, all the signals quit going to that single atom, and then you just experience what it is being one atom again. Anyway, it's not based on anything. I was just thinking about that. Because, like, you perceive it as before you were born, there was, like, nothing, right? You weren't experiencing anything. But, like, there were people and consciousnesses alive for millions of years before you existed. So why did those consciousnesses come into light and your consciousness never did come into the light, like, until randomly it did? Well, it's because during all those millions and millions of years, the single atom that you are was never inside a brain of a creature. Until the moment you were born, that's when your atom got swept up into a piece of fruit that a person ate. So it's just when you're forming. It's like just when you're forming in the womb. Yeah, then like one of them has to just randomly be the center one. Yeah. You could reincarnate, but it's just super unlikely. Yeah, that's true. The what? Hmm. Yeah. Or there could be. I just had a thought. Instead of being an atom, because people talk about like kind of a metaphysical consciousness or unified consciousness or whatever, a conscious field. If there was a conscious field and the hardware of your body in your brain somehow picks up on that, attunes to it, and then it starts experiencing itself through this body as a person. I can see that happening, and then when you die, all the memories, that's in your brain. So you're losing access to the hardware that was storing your memory. So you just be, when you did reincarnate, so maybe you reincarnate every time, like, or you could be reincarnated as everyone, but you wouldn't remember any of the other ones. So you just feel like this was my first life and only life. Hmm. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's believable. Yeah. AI is summoning demons. Cause like good and evil, for example, evil doesn't. My rational brain and my experience would just say that evil is just a combination of phenomena that just arises naturally. Um, competition, human biology and evolution, environmental pressures. They create behaviors and cause. Psychopathy, for example. You have a sadistic psychopath. Um, it either could just be random mutations that happen to them, or it could be that it's beneficial to have a small number of your population to not have empathy. Then when you're like, you know, you have them be your warriors, and they can go and they can kill babies of the other tribe and rape their women and cut all their heads off and steal all their stuff, and then that benefits your tribe directly, and it doesn't hurt that individual. They're unencumbered by whatever. So there could be all these, or just like the greed theory and game theory and all these things that kind of arise to evil, and that makes sense to me. But it just seems like evil is a force, like a conscious force. Like it doesn't. I can get why it would arise naturally, but like the existence of like a sadistic pedophile who just wants to like rape and kill children just doesn't make sense to me unless there's like a force of just true evil that pervades everything that gets a hold of this being, kind of the same way that consciousness itself gets a hold of or flows through a certain structure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It seems like evil is conscious, which would, and I guess it seems like good would be conscious, which is where God and the devil come from, I guess. Mm-hmm. The evil node. Yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm. Wait, in Mormonism, this can't just be Mormonism. Uh, they teach that Satan is the god of this earth, which is kind of the same as Gnostic. I guess Gnosticism has a similar idea. Do other Christians believe that? Okay. Like his dominion is over earth. Okay. That makes sense. Um, I kind of have this. I kind of would think more along the lines of the Gnostics, and it's also kind of this idea in Lord of the Rings where um, Melkor, the first Dark Lord, his power is kind of like diffused throughout all of reality. So like down to the smallest particle, like his corruption touches everything, and it kind of seems like how it is here. Like it seems like this this physical realm, well, like they say it's fallen. In I don't know if that's just an LDS thing, but it's like a fallen realm. It's like the structure of the realm itself is not it's conducive to evil, or like in other words, that's like what dominion. That's why Satan has dominion here, is because it's not a direct spiritual realm, and so physical corruption and which then leads to metaphysical corruption can occur. Like this is kind of God's. It's kind of like the devil's playground in a way. Like physical matter is not ideal. Like spiritual matter is the ideal state of existence. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. But doesn't it seem to you though that like physical matter is not the ideal mode of existence? Because like all the pain and evil things that happen are like happening because of the nature of the physical realm. Like parasites exist because it's possible in this structure to have parasites, and it's possible to like abuse your kids. But like I don't think in the spiritual realm there's parasites and people smacking their kids. It just seems like a flawed. It seems like a fundamentally flawed creation, without like the devil directly intervening. Like I don't think the devil makes malaria that kills innocent babies, but like it's just kind of a part of the structure that's possible. A fallen structure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like good things. Well, like let's just say this. Let's say that it's not part of the good or bad node, and that good things just can happen because of the structure and the causation, and bad things can just happen just because of chemistry and physics. Bad things can happen and good things can happen. If that I can accept that would be the case, and then but the problem is that the bad things happen way more. Like the bad wins almost all the time. Like it's almost all bad. That's why it's the devil's realm in a sense. Well, it could in the end, but it doesn't. It seems blatantly obvious to me that evil, for the moment, has more power in this 3D existence. What state are you talking about? Right. Well, let's say we destroyed the devil. Say the evil node or whatever it is gone. Kabuya. Wouldn't there still be entropy? Wouldn't people still be aging and dying? Wouldn't people still be getting in fights with each other because it's just human nature, not because there's a demon making them do it? Wouldn't parasites still get into little kids' eyeballs and make them go blind in Africa? Hmm. Yeah. So could you accept that, like, without any kind of metaphysical forces, like the world could just be kind of corrupted anyway, but that there's a lot more of it because of these, you know, evil beings or forces? Hmm. Yeah, I just don't. I just think that, like, I can't give you stats and things, but like it seems like so obvious, like it doesn't even have to be said that the world is mostly suffering. Like reality is mostly suffering. But I mean, you can just disagree with that. Like I can't prove it, but like it's a lot easier to destroy than to build. It's a lot easier to fall down than build yourself up, to regress, to degenerate, to become evil than it is to become good, to become a success. It's a lot easier to fail than become successful. It's a lot easier to hate than to love. Like hate almost just flows, while love takes effort. Um, it takes all this, even just to exist in a basic state, like requires all this effort and troubleshooting and failure, um, starvation, diseases, predation, human evil, human conflict. Like all of human history has been defined by rape, murder, conflict, theft, egos, power, selfishness. Like it just seems so obvious to me. Like, and even in the natural world, it's just like rending of flesh, just animals parasitizing each other, predating on each other, ripping a gazelle having its baby ripped out of its womb while it's alive and screaming by a lion. And then you say, well, this be the lion. Well, no, lions have really hard lives. They have to constantly fight with other lions and hyenas. They get diseases. They have internal conflict. They break their ankle fighting a buffalo and they starve to death. Like it just seems like the whole structure from the macro to the micro is bad to me. Is not ideal. Is not the ideal. Right. Yeah. It's the baby puts its hand on um the snake's nest or whatever, the hole that the snake lives in. It puts its hand on it and doesn't get bitten. Yeah, so I don't know. I could see it being none of it is has anything to do with divine or transcendent forces, or all of it is determined by that, or a combination of both. Yeah. Yeah. It just seems like to me it trying to trying to guess what God's nature would be just based on how reality is. It would be like he's evil. It's an evil thing, or it is a flawed thing, or it just doesn't have all of the power and wisdom we would ascribe to it. Um, well, um, if I were a god and I decided to break myself up into a billion different people and forget that I was God, and then watch the drama play out of all these people living their lives in conflict and everything good and bad that happens. All the bad that happens, would that be evil that I caused? Like, is it evil? I'm doing it to myself. To the little, yeah. Because like every person is a me. But like if you do evil, if you do make yourself suffer, wouldn't that still be evil? Because like if that is the case right now, let's say I'm an aspect of God that chose to suffer. I don't really remember. I don't remember that, and I don't consent to it in this limited form that I am. Like it feels like real evil is done to me and shouldn't be done. Just like in a cosmic way, shouldn't be done. But if I started it and consented to it before when I had higher, knowledge and capacity, is it still evil? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um. Okay, so here's another same thing, just framed in a different way. Um. Let's say there's this woman, my girlfriend, whatever, doesn't matter, and she really wants to have her memory wiped temporarily, and then she wants me to like beat her up and rape her. And so while she's in this state, she doesn't know who I am, she doesn't know what's going on, she doesn't want this to happen, she doesn't want to be raped. That's why it's rape. But after, when the drug wears off and she comes back to herself and remembers what happened to her, it's going to give her immense pleasure. She's going to really love this experience. But while she's in that state, I am raping and beating up someone. Like, that just is what's happening. Who doesn't want it to happen to them? Right? And so if God's doing that to us, it seems just as egregious to me. Yeah, in that moment, though. Yeah, I'm just saying, in that moment, isn't a horrible evil being done? Even if afterwards they consent? I'm not a fourth dimensional being. I'm not going to say, well, it's all happening at once, because it's not. What invalidates it in the Christian sense, or what problems do you have with it? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Existence is mysterious. Hmm. Right. Um. Like how much of what I think now? Oh well, goodbye to what? Oh. Yeah, there's a lot of um like ideas around what they would call deep doctrine, and then the kind of sentiment is that you don't need to talk about it. Is like when we were talking about the creation, the worlds, like the creating your own worlds kind of thing. Um, it would just be like oh, maybe that's true, but we don't need to worry about that or talk about that or think about that. Just pay your tithing, kind of thing. Yeah, yeah, Yeah. Yeah. Um, I don't know. I haven't really. I haven't studied enough. Anything I know. What sect did you even belong to? Yeah.